Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone tonight. Welcome to the Milton School Committee meeting on Wednesday, August 25th of 2021. I am calling the meeting to order. I'm so excited to see everyone, our last meeting of the summer and our first meeting before the new school year. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any alterations, changes, additions, or subtractions to the agenda? No? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, we don't have to do a roll call vote for this. All in favor, just raise your hand for the agenda. Okay, that's 6-0, wonderful. All right, so I just want to update everyone who's attending the meeting virtually that we are going to start our meetings from now on with the superintendent's report. We're going to hear from the educational leaders of our district on what's happening in teaching and learning, and particularly tonight, a back to school update, enrollment updates, and some other important updates around the handbook. And after that, we will have citizen speak and the rest of the meeting. And I want to touch on one more thing. I've received a couple of emails about why we're having virtual meetings. And what we've discovered during the pandemic is that we reach more people when we have virtual meetings. More people are paying attention, more people are able to access the meeting. And we think this is a very effective way to communicate with the community during this time. So we will continue to have virtual meetings and resume in-person meetings when we feel that we have some good communication going and we're ready to start again. So with no further ado, I turn it over to Superintendent Chet.
Thank you, Chair Eberhardt. And if you guys will bear with me for 1 second, I just want to share my screen, if I'm able to do that. And please let me know when you're able to see it, if someone could do that for me.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So first and foremost, I just wanted to say, at Milton Public Schools, the administration, the faculty and staff are really excited to start the new school year on Wednesday, September 1st. We've had the luxury of having all of our new faculty and staff that we are hired. We still have a couple of small positions, well, not small, but a couple of positions to go. But we had our new staff in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Went through a battery of different orientation types things to make sure that we're helping them on board in a very successful way and getting them prepared. Yesterday, we met with the entire leadership team, 36 folks, from central office personnel to department heads, principals, vice principals, and curriculum coordinators, to really sit back and talk about teaching and learning, push that to the forefront, and try to identify some common themes to kind of bring us all together. So it was a really nice exercise to sit and calibrate what we think effective teaching looks like. Ran through a battery of exercises that were run by department heads, and sharing their expertise. So we're gearing up, we're ready to go. This week and last week, we had our adjustment counselors at Milton High School that were working with some of our more vulnerable students and some of our students who were remote for the entire year last year to help them get reacclimated into the Milton High School environment. And a very similar situation was taking place at the middle school level with the adjustment counselors and guidance counselors doing some outreach, assessing what the needs are, some of our students who are fully remote for the entire year. So we were very excited to have some of these initiatives going, and believe it or not, today marks exactly 1 week from the start that all of our students are gonna get on the bus, get dropped off, or walk to these buildings and bring them alive. And I gotta tell you, I'm extremely excited. One of the things that I wanted to share with folks is that over the course of the last couple of weeks, there were a lot of concerns. There were a lot of emails that said, you know what, Mr. Jett, what is the plan? We have no plan. I want to be very clear. We've always had a plan. If you go back to this January 7th, when we did in January 21st, when we did the pre-K night in the kindergarten night, those are recorded sessions when people ask me, what is your plan for September? And I said, we plan to be full in person, full time. The only thing that was going to be questionable at that time were whether or not we would be wearing masks, because we knew it was a delay, particularly in elementary levels with getting vaccinated because they weren't age eligible to do so. So I wanted to share with folks. And then at the end of the year, we culminated the year with saying the very same thing. And so we're full in person, and I'm going to go through a couple of slides. I took the liberty of emailing some of the parents, some of the information that we would go over this evening, but I just wanted to make it clear for the viewing audience and for those who may be tuning in and didn't get a chance to see the email. So for this year, MPS expects to open up full-time 5 days a week. Masks are required pre-K to 12, and we're going to review that every month. And I know a lot of people asked about that. This was a decision, or at least we were talking about this decision a couple of weeks ago at a sub-policy committee meeting, and we felt strongly about that. And as we could see, obviously, our governor of Massachusetts and our commissioner feels the same way with the announcement yesterday and making it official today. There's no social distance requirement or restrictions. However, social distance will be implemented where possible. And what I mean by that is sometimes we have various classes that may be a little larger in sizes. We talked about that all throughout the year. We know we have a growing enrollment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this presentation. Unfortunately, at this time, the state has already communicated. They did that back in June. They said there would be no remote or no hybrid option. So there's no remote hybrid option. All students are required to come into the building. We do have a number of students that selected homeschooling, and we're working with those folks to review their curriculum that they submitted. But at this time, we expect all of our students to come to the Milton Public Schools on Wednesday, September 1st. And for our younger cherubs, it's going to be the following week on the 7th. All extracurricular activities and programs will be in place. And some of the same guidelines for indoor masking will apply to those programs as well. And as I alluded to, our adjustment counselors and guidance counselors were working the last couple of weeks to support our students. And as I go through this, I will give the school committee a chance to ask questions when we get to that question session, just to let you know. Mass expectations, again, all students pre-K through 12, staff and visitors come next week. They're required to wear a mask within the building, indoors. The policy includes all indoor meetings and events. So if you're coming for an IEP meeting, if you're coming to meet with a guidance counselor, or you're requesting a meeting regarding registration or residency, you have to wear a mask inside the building, whether you're vaccinated or not. When outdoors, masks are optional. However, for those who are unvaccinated or immunocompromised, we strongly encourage wearing masks. There are exceptions to the mask mandate for students who cannot wear it because of medical conditions. We do have a medical exemption form. If that applies to your child, we ask you to complete that form and submit that form to your school nurse to be reviewed. And then obviously we're willing to work with any and everyone regarding the mask and making sure that we're providing the support for students who may have a medical condition. Mask breaks. Principals are working with their faculty and staff to implement mask breaks as we did last year. That will be done throughout the day. What's nice about that is we're walking into a situation where we hope to have favorable weather all the way through from September to November, and teachers can take advantage of the outdoors, thus giving them more opportunities to get fresh air. So we're looking forward to that. The mask policy. Some people say, well, what guidance are you following? What are you doing? I will say that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Center for Disease Control, Mass Department of Public Health are all in line with our plan, which we already announced that we would like to go mask indoors K through 12 or pre-K through 12, excuse me. And now it's supported by the governor and the commissioner who in the beginning were adamant about optional masks, particularly grades 7 through 12. So it seems like everyone is in sync and in line with this. And one piece that I would add is that I want the viewing public to know that we're not doing this in isolation. I am part of a consortium of superintendents, 33 superintendents we meet with on a regular basis. I also communicate with superintendents on the South Shore. We're in constant communication with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We're not going into this blindly. We do a lot of communication, following a lot of data. And most importantly, I got to give a lot of kudos to Kim Coughlin, the Director of Nurses in the Milton Public Schools, who will be on this call for questions today at the time. And then we're also partnering with the town departments as well to see what's going on globally in the town of Milton. So these are not isolated decisions that are being made by James Jett or Kim Coughlin. It is a collaborative effort. And I would be remiss to say our principals, our staff, we are doing this to make sure that our students and our staff can enter buildings that are safe and conducive for a nice, comfortable learning environment. So breakfast and lunch. I just want to, although there are not any social distance requirements, DESE does recommend spreading out when feasible. We have a very large enrollment, and I'm gonna get to that in a second as well. Our enrollment is up significantly from last year and the year before, but we're making every attempt to do that. And Collycott, Cunningham, and Pierce, along with Milton High School, have added an extra lunch period for the day to allow us to spread the students out and keep them comfortable. But also, this was a challenge before the pandemic, particularly at the Pierce Middle School. Some students will eat in the cafeteria, some may eat in the gymnasium on days in which the weather is not favorable, and some may eat outdoors when the weather is favorable. A lot of those details will be coming from individual principals to give you that, because it may vary from building to building. So it'd be a very lengthy conversation if I was to try to describe that right now. MPS will remain nut-free for breakfast, snack, and lunch during this time. And this is very important because we think about those who have allergies to nuts, peanuts. So we want to make sure that we're creating that safe environment. So we ask for all parent and guardians for your cooperation to make sure you're checking with students. And please encourage students not to share their snacks because sometimes people don't know that they're allergic to something until they try something new. So we want to make sure that that's the case. They can always get a snack, whether it be from a nurse if there's a need, or from food services. We work with every family. And I do want to remind folks, lunch and breakfast are free for all students between now and the end of the academic year, so June 2022. That's very important for folks to know. Recess and physical education classes, and I could have put a slash on there and added any other class that decides to go outside. Masks will not be required. Masks will not be required, but they are optional, and we're going to make every attempt to make sure those who decide to wear a mask outdoors do so comfortably and not subjected to any ridicule from peers or anything like that. Every safety and how people view the world and what we're going through varies from person to person, and we want to make sure every person is comfortable in the building. Indoors, unfortunately, there's certain days when the weather is not favorable, downpours, rain. We might have to have physical education indoors or recess indoors, or those movement breaks. Students will be required to put a mask on during that time. And even outdoors, whether it's whether it's recess, physical education, some of our athletic programs, we're still going to encourage the social distance as best we can. We have a lot of space to do it, but as you can imagine, if you get outside with 30 students, particularly at middle and high school, spreading them out is going to make it very difficult for the teacher to kind of communicate on a regular basis or throughout that class period. So we're going to do it as best we can, but masks will be optional outside. In alignment with the state mandate, masks must be worn on all school buses, whether you're going to school, from school, or any school-related activity. That is a state requirement supported by the Mass Department of Public Health. So I'm just letting people know, if you're sending your students to school on a Milton Public School bus, they need to be masked at all times, and they should not be eating on school buses. The bus company is working with us. They know that the windows need to remain open. Now, obviously, if there are days where there's extreme downpour, they may still be open, but they may not be as open as wide as they would on a day like today when the weather is nice. Athletics and athletic events. We're running all the events that we've done on a normal year pre-COVID. Student athletes do not need to wear masks when on school campus while outside. Mask wearing will be optional during that time. Students can use the locker room, the weight room, all of the facilities. Again, I want to remind folks, as of June 15th, the state of emergency was lifted. So a lot of the restrictions that were in place prior to then have been lifted. However, yesterday's announcement was a little bit of a shift in terms of the mask requirement. Spectators may attend the athletic events in the field house. There's no limitations for that. Obviously, we can't exceed capacity, but no limitation due to COVID-19. But spectators will be asked to wear a mask whether you're vaccinated or not. And I know that's a tough sell for some of the adults, but we ask for your cooperation. so we could continue to have our programs run. We will have extra masks available for any students or adults to enter the field house or any of the indoor activities in the event that they forget one or one is damaged and they need to. As I alluded to, all student coaches and bus drivers will be required to wear masks traveling to and from athletic events. And we have to adhere to the policies, particularly at the high school. When we're competing against other schools, their policies might shift slightly, but even though their policy change, our policies will still be in play. We look at the school bus as a school on wheels, and we look at us going to other facilities as an extension of the Milton Public Schools in the school day. So even though somebody else might have different expectations, we have to adhere to the Milton Public School expectations. We encourage social distancing even when outdoors for our athletic events, particularly in our bleachers. Obviously, cohorts of family members or household members could sit together and they could congregate, but we ask that people separate themselves as best that they can. Students will be asked to bring their own personal refillable bottles. Now, this is applicable for the school day as well. You should bring your own bottle, and we encourage students not to share. The daily self-screening protocols will be applicable for all after-school activities as well. Obviously, students will go through the day and midday not feel well, but still try to stretch it so they can attend their after-school club activity or sporting event. We're gonna ask students to really check themselves and we'll work with them in terms of any time missed from school or give them the support that they need. Testing initiative. We have applied for, and at the time of this, me putting this together, we didn't get the answer. We applied for the state testing program, the testing initiative, the test and stay. The deadline was on Friday, the 20th, and I'm pleased to announce that Monday, the 23rd, when I walked in the office, I had an email in my inbox saying that we were approved for that. So that is good news. The Test and Stay program is an initiative intended for asymptomatic close contacts and individuals to really test them to see if they are positive. If not positive, they get the opportunity to continue to wear a mask and stay in school. The whole initiative is really trying to keep students in school as much as possible for in-person learning, which I completely endorse. The testing also allows us to do the buy next now. Now, although we got approved and although we got accepted, we're still waiting for the training from the CIC Health. We need that training. And one of the things that we asked for, in many of you may know this, through our budget presentations last spring, and actually from December last year, we talked about how understaffed we were for nurses. We no longer have those medical waiting rooms or medical waiting room nursing staff. So we asked for staff and support and courier support. All of that was part of the application process. So when they said we got approved, I'm hoping that we got approved for all of that because that will be taxing if we have nurses who have to test students in the classroom during the school day while they're still performing their daily duties as a nurse. We have students who are insulin dependent. We have students who are asthmatic. We have students that administered medication through the nurse's office on a daily basis. So the last thing that we want to do is really create a bottleneck in the health rooms in any of the schools for testing. So I sent this all in the email to families. And again, we go through this process, but we'll update you a little bit more as we get more information about the test and stay protocols and what we're able to do, not able to do. But I still remain optimistic about that. So we have some other mitigating strategies that we have in place for students and staff that I think that the general public should be aware of. We have air purifiers that will be placed in every single teaching space and office. Windows in classroom doors will remain open. This helps with the number of circulation in the room. And we'll also take into consideration allergies on those days where it's raining, pollen may be heavy or whatever the case may be. We will work with those students and families. Rooftop units vents will remain open to take in the ambient, the cooler air during the evening, which will help keep our buildings cool on days like this. Now, when it's a day where it falls below 60, we're gonna ask students to dress appropriately, maybe bring a sweatshirt, because it could be a little chillier in the building, and then to turn on the heat. And the heat typically doesn't go on until October 15th. To turn on the heat, it takes a long time or a significant amount of time to heat up these big brick buildings. So we want people to be mindful of that with the temperature. Each school building will be thoroughly cleaned every night, as we did all of last year. MPS COVID-19 daily symptom screenings, that symptom screening protocol has been updated. It is online. The letter that I sent home to family, those are live links. So you can look at the symptoms, the daily symptom screening. We were approved for the test and stay program, as I just talked about. MPS is committed to setting up the vaccination clinics and community testing. I sent a notice home early in the week, or excuse me, last week. I want to make it very, very clear. This vaccination clinic is free. That will be in my update tomorrow as well. It is free of charge for anyone that goes through. No one will be turned away, even though they ask you to bring your health card. They're not going to turn anyone away. So the vaccination clinic is this coming Saturday, August 28th, for anyone who would like to be vaccinated. This is applicable to faculty, staff. This is applicable to age-eligible students, their families, and community members. So this is open to everyone. It would take place at 25 Gall Road at Milton High, in the back of the school in the field house. So I encourage people to spread the word. That's something that definitely promote on Facebook. We want to make sure that we can get as many people who are eligible to be vaccinated. We will continue with our PPEs. They will be available to all our faculty and staff, and this includes a surplus of masks in every single one of the rooms. We will also have a surplus of masks at all of our events in the event someone forgets or someone has complication with theirs. Hand hygiene, again, will be encouraged and reinforced throughout the day. And then our data, COVID-19 data reporting will be updated weekly. Now, as of right now, I haven't had any word or indication from DESE whether or not that they're going to continue to do their data reporting like they did last year. However, Milton Public Schools is committed to that. If we have positive cases in the school buildings, whether it's student or staff, absent of their name, age, and things like that, we will let you know how many positive cases among students or staff. We want to be as transparent as possible when it comes to updating you that. So at this point in time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and that kind of gives us a little bit of an overview of some of the protocols and things that we have in place. And if anyone has any questions for us, I'm happy to answer. If it's a medical one, Kim Coughlin, the director of nurses for the Milton Public Schools, is also on the call.
If you guys have questions, just like raise your hand or ask James what you like. Superintendent Jett, what you want to ask him.
Yes, Ada.
Thank you for this comprehensive update, Superintendent Jett. I have a question about the not having the medical waiting rooms, and perhaps Nurse Coughlin can tell us more. I'm just wondering how will we be handling kids who become symptomatic during the day and that need to be tested, and where will they go?
Kim, can I'll try to answer this and then I'll let Kim jump in. One of the things that we said all last year, we talked about our enrollment and our tight spaces. And when I go to enrollment, you're going to see the numbers. You're going to see what we had to do to accommodate our increase in numbers. In order to receive all of the students back, we have to open up the spaces. We need every classroom space available. And so that's the piece that I have been communicating with. So last week when the deadline was over, I called Anne-Marie Stronach from the Department of Elementary Secondary Education. And that's why we're asking for the staff, because if you've been in any of the buildings, some of those rooms, and we might have to cannibalize at various buildings, certain parts of the gym and cord those off and have those as a section. And I hate to say that because even with the testing now, the results don't come back for 15 to 20 minutes. And if you have to test 10 kids or 20 students, they have to be held there until their results are coming back. And then Kim Coughlin or one of the building nurses gives that update and the result, or the CIC health staff is hopefully going to be helping us out. Sorry, Kim, I don't know if there's
Nope, that's okay. That's great. I'll jump in quickly. I'll reiterate that, we did look at the DESE and the Department of Public Health guidance that did come out, and that guidance did say that medical waiting rooms were no longer necessary. I do also meet with district leaders from various towns around the state of Massachusetts. Our neighboring towns, Braintree, Canton, Quincy, had talked with them throughout the school year. They had also not been using, a couple of them had been using medical waiting rooms, some had not. So we're looking at strategies that we can use. I have talked to building principals about identifying certain spaces within their buildings that we can use on an as needed basis. We may have to test some of those schools. We're testing kids in their classrooms. So again, as we find out more about this test and stay program and we figure out the logistics of how we will do that, that is how we will be able to do the testing and waiting for those results within the 15 minutes. We're also going to really rely, again, it's a team effort from everyone on the community to be doing that daily screening tool. Our medical waiting rooms were used a lot last year for students that were coming in who were coming into school not feeling well. So again, we're going to get the message out there in the education that if your student has those symptoms, to please keep them home, and work with families to ensure as well that their emergency contact information and everything is updated, so that if a student does become ill during the school day, that they will be picked up in a timely fashion.
Great, thank you.
Hi, James. I have a question, and I thank you for giving us such a thorough overview, because I think it answers many of the questions that I have received from families. I would like to know if DESE has given you the autonomy to transition to a remote option in the event that the positive COVID cases rise beyond what can be managed with the existing teaching staff. Any updates on that would be helpful.
At this point in time, we haven't had any updates remote in hybrid or off the table, and even shifting to remote in the middle of an outbreak. What they do talk about is they talk about the mobile vaccination units. They talk about support with testing, but they haven't given that answer. And quite frankly, that is a question that many superintendents were asking, particularly at our elementary levels, when we see the Delta variant being more prevalent in the communities now, and where we have close to 2,500 students at the elementary level that are not even eligible for the vaccination. So that is a concern, but we're gonna do our best. That was one of the reasons why, and I know it upset folks, and trust me, I wanna make it very clear to the viewing audience. I do not like wearing a mask. I'm claustrophobic and asthmatic. But when it comes time to student safety in the building, this is something that we have to do for greater good for the larger population. Now, if I had the choice with just myself and my family, that might be different. But as your superintendent of Milton Public Schools, we need to make decisions, and same thing with you guys as a school committee, make decisions for the entire student population, and that includes the faculty and staff. So right now, no authority to change to remote at this point in time. And so we're going to continue to have these meetings. My hope is we get an update, and it's also going to depend on what the health metrics say.
And I think as a school committee, it's something that we should discuss at some point, because I was very pleased when the education commissioner changed its stance on masks. So I know that there's flexibility to change one's mind in reflection of the current situation. And as we head into October, even if kids are allowed to get the vaccination, if we have to wait 5 weeks like the adults did for them to get the second dose, we could be in a very challenging situation before we can protect the kids. So I think it might be incumbent on us to be proactive about reaching out to DESE, so it's not just the superintendent's voice that's trying to engage the education commissioner to show him that there might be, it would make sense to give local autonomy in that circumstance.
I think Lizzie had her hand up, Superintendent Jen, and then Betty.
Hey, I'm sorry, my screen is so small because I still have my other piece up.
I apologize. I think
That's
Liz,
all right.
Dr. Carroll had her hand up, and then Member White had her hand up.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. I just, going back to testing for a moment, just a couple of quick clarifying questions. In the letter, so thank you also for the letter that you sent out to families, which I received. And in the additional guidance, which I'm inferring is coming from DESE, those numbered bullets on the third page of the letter, can you please clarify? So you mentioned the Binax Now tests, that is what we'll have access to for test and stay. Sorry, my diabetes gadgets, don't mind that. So Binax Now tests for test and stay. On number 4 of this list, it says that we could continue to test students with mild symptoms with Binax Now tests if available. So long as the tests are negative, individuals with mild symptoms should remain in school. Would that be sort of like a case by case, not necessarily a close contact, but if someone were to show up at school, like you were saying, Nurse Coughlin, with mild symptoms, would they be able to access a test, a rapid test, by showing up to school?
So yeah, that is a good question. So that is a branch of how you can use the test and stay program. Once you've been approved and you do get the funding to have these Binax Now tests and your nurses are trained to do the testing, then the next step would be getting parental and guardian consent. So without the consent, we can't test anyone. I want to make that clear. But that would be a situation where if a student was ill, we had the written consent from the parent or guardian, and we were calling them, we could offer that test if they fit the criteria that would suggest that a test would be appropriate.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's helpful. And just my second question is regarding pooled testing. And so I think I understand that because we as a district have opted for test and stay, we are therefore not participating in pooled testing. Is that correct? The note here under the guidance says weekly COVID pooled testing remains strongly recommended for unvaccinated individuals. Is that something we're pursuing, or are we doing test and stay as an alternative to that?
As of now, test and stay as the alternative. When we did look at pooled testing for the district last year, it was not a good fit for a variety of reasons. Staffing, the staffing burden it would place on us, along with a financial burden, and what the benefits that we were seeing from other districts that had been doing it. They were not in any better of a place than we were, to be honest with you, from doing it. And then looking at the data again at the end of this year, where they ended up, we felt that the test and stay program gave us a lot more basically bang for your buck with what you get. We'd be able to keep kids in school that are close contacts, which is what we were finding was keeping kids home. So when we were looking at what our goal was, which was to keep kids in school that were asymptomatic and were healthy enough to be in school, we thought that that program definitely fit and aligned with our goals more closely.
Great, thanks so much.
So my question had to do with whether, Kim, you know the current COVID metrics in Milton right now. How are we doing before school opens up next week?
So unfortunately, I have not heard from the Board of Health. They are posting, so it is on the Board of Health website. I did not see currently the recent data. I know that since August 5th, since our county had turned red, the metrics have been trending in that direction with the Delta variant. I know that the Board of Health is posting them, but again, I would more defer those questions to our director at our town Board of Health. We don't keep at the school data during the summer months when we don't see the kids. The parents don't report that to us.
Any other questions?
Does anyone else have any questions? Superintendent Jett and Nurse Coughlin, thank you very much for this update. It's very comprehensive, and I think it clearly lays out our plan. Our plan is to go back to school. Full return to school, all students in person, wearing masks, distancing when possible, optimizing the use of outdoor spaces for lunch, for class, for learning, for play, a test and stay program that we can implement, and perhaps testing for symptomatic things with permission. So that's my question for all of you. Are you sending a Google form to parents and asking them to sign from the beginning of the year to opt into being tested at school?
So we would like to do that, but one of the things that we are waiting for is to really have the training session and the onboarding to see what staff we have.
Okay,
But that is something because they might help us construct that permission slip and what it looks like and what we're able to do, not able to do.
Right.
So one of the biggest things is we did get the link for the training in the past to review the videos, but now we're waiting for this conversation in the training for our nurses, and it affords us the opportunity to have a Q&A session with the trainers.
Superintendent Jett, if so, you applied for and were granted the grant for the test and stay program, and you asked for additional support. What happens if we don't get that additional support? Does the school committee need to think about resources for that? What is the concern around that piece? Because you need people, you need bodies to make.
You need people, but equally as important, we always talk about this on the teacher side with the professional development, you're going to need the training as well.
Right.
So
Right.
buying the items in and bringing them up in here into the Milton Public Schools is one thing, but making sure that our nurses are equipped to do it, or support staff in addition to nurses, because we're going to need, without question, we're going to need support, whether we get support from CIC Health or we do it on our own. We're going to need additional support to administer that type of volume of tests in the event that there's a situation where one or two in a particular classroom are COVID positive.
And to answer Member White's question, we can reach out to
I just looked it up. We have one new case this past week in Milton.
Carolyn Kinsella, and we can ask for regular updates, Kim, for that information to be available to us.
Yeah.
She has it.
And in fairness to Carolyn Casella, I believe she is on vacation this week.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. So I don't, and then I also wanted, for the viewing audience, one of the biggest things that we really had a challenge with last year is trying to really or effectively communicate why we pivot in some cases. We did not always pivot because a student in the class or someone with a student in the class. That's not why we pivot remote. We pivot remote because it had an impact prior to our faculty and staff getting the vaccinations. We didn't have the staffing to adequately bring students back in the building. And I caution people about solely looking at Milton numbers, because we have a number of faculty and staff who do not live in the town of Milton, who live elsewhere. So people say, I don't understand why you're doing it. There's only 8 cases in Milton. Well, not everybody lives in Milton that works in the Milton Public Schools. And so we're gonna do more of these updates. And what's nice about this now, we can have people come into the buildings and we'll try to separate and we'll try to do more in person to make it personal. I do, you know, for smaller groups, if you have a question individually, you want to meet with an administrator or myself, we definitely try to work that out. And if it's a larger group, we just do it as we're doing now to maybe answer questions for folks.
Right. I'm just going to quickly look through my notes. I took notes on the many questions that we received from families about these issues. So you talked about vaccines, and you're having the vaccination clinic that will be free, and you gave the date of that, and you'll provide an update for that in the in your blog, in your update. We talked about masks. We talked about what health experts you're consulting and what resources you're using to make these decisions on a regular basis. We talked about the fact that there is no remote option. So pivoting to remote is not an option right now. And as Member Rostany said, something for us to think about as a school committee in case things go in a direction that we don't like. How do we continue to support learning for students without that option? We talked about using the outdoor spaces. At this point, we're not going to be using tents, and I don't think we have any funds available or thinking about purchasing tents, right? Is that that's correct, right? We're just going to use and optimize the spaces that we have and use the materials that we had last year. And then one other parent asked that we consider that we talk to the principals specifically address hydration and the need to have hydration breaks in addition to mask breaks.
So that's a very good question, because there was some speculation about a hydration plan and keeping kids hydrated. I want folks to know last year we did 2 years ago, we did a campaign and raised money to put in hands-free water filtration refiller stations. Those are in there. And in my communication today, a couple of weeks ago, we were already in contact with Jackie Morgan and Food Services for those big Gatorade things to set up water stations. And we just asking people to make sure that their child comes in with a mask, maybe a backup mask. We have surplus, a refillable water bottle. We've never denied, and I'm going to repeat that again, we've never denied students from drinking water. They have breaks. We have mask breaks. Students could bring in their water bottle. They could refill it at their leisure, and they could keep it on their desk. And so they could take a sip anytime. Remember, the rules are you don't have to wear a mask if you're eating or drinking in school. So if a student needs to quickly pull down their mask to take a sip, particularly on days like today, if we have weather like that, we want students to stay hydrated. And I would only encourage folks to think about hot days, wear light colored clothing to try to help keep the body cool on these days.
Right. So I just want to, again, reiterate my thanks to all of you. I want the community to know that our goal is we're going back to school in person, and we're very excited for those opportunities. We know that there's a lot of uncertainty around the landscape of COVID right now, and there's some anxiety on the parts of parents because I don't know what percentage our elementary school students make up of our population. I don't know that off the top of my head, but those students are unvaccinated. And it's going to look different perhaps week to week, month to month, season to season. And the cooperation of the community will go a long way to us all being in a different place when we wrap up the year at the end of this year. So I really appreciate the emails we got in support of all the mitigation strategies that we're using. Keep asking your questions and raising your concerns, and we'll do our best to answer them. And we're all going to get through this year with a positive attitude and a can-do spirit that this can be done, and we'll keep each other safe and healthy in the process. Okay, so next on your list there.
The next on the list is really to talk about the enrollment.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to ask you for your patience to let me get the enrollment so you can have a visual here. Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Perfect. Yeah. So what you see in front of you is the Milton Public School enrollment trend. It goes all the way back to 2017. And just so you guys know, the reason why it's not 17, 18, or 18, 19, these are the numbers that we get smack dab in the middle of the academic year. The only number that's current right now or start at the beginning of the year is what we have on a register for the Milton Public Schools starting for September 1st. So as you can see, over the course of the years, we had an increase with the exception of last year. Now, that was no surprise to any of us. A lot of folks decided to do homeschool. Some folks decided to put particularly kindergarten, first grade into a private or parochial school because they had the ability to cap their class sizes and they were open. They don't have to necessarily follow DESE guidance. It's a recommendation for them. So we all knew that there was a little bit of dip, but as of today, August 25th, the Milton Public Schools enrollment is 4,406 students, and we have about 4 incomplete registrations that will probably be complete by Monday. And so, and we talked about this last year, and I say this very respectfully, oftentimes I got emails that saying I was using this as an excuse about that. But one of the things I want to say to you is, if you look at it by school, Collicott has 662 students, Cunningham has 611, Glover 624, Tucker 461, Pierce 936, which is a little bit of a dip, and Milton High School 1,112. Those are the numbers as of today. And as I stated, but if you look at the bottom, the Collicott, Cunningham, and Glover were built for the capacity of 500 students. And the Tucker was built for 400 students. As you can see from those numbers, we're well over the capacity limit. Now, you might say, well, what are you doing how are we accommodating that increase in enrollment? Prior to this year, there was changes made, but this year, just this past summer, we converted the library, space in the teacher's room at the Collicott school. There's a section of the library closest to the Collicott that will be partitioned off, and that will be a small teaching space. The teacher's room, we took that teacher's room. That is now a student learning space. The Cunningham School, if you walked in the same library on the opposite end, coming from the Cunningham side to the right, that is now going to be a rather large classroom space to accommodate our enrollment. The Glover, there's no more art room. We're using that as a teaching space. There's no more music space. This summer, I had a parent come up to me and said, oh my God, I can't believe that you guys are making a class on the stage in the cafetorium of the Glover. That's what we need to do to accommodate the enrollment. Tucker, the library we use as a multi-purpose learning space for like music classes, art classes, and other classes, depending on what's going on that particular day. Pierce, we converted the library space. If you come from the 8th grade wing, enter those side doors, to the right is now a classroom space. The grade 18 area, walls were put up. Windows would change to add ventilation windows in that team area. That is now a classroom space. We divided the adjustment counselor's office, which was a fairly decent size. We divided that in half, not all the way up to the ceiling, to make that 2 office spaces. We divided the library office that was behind the circulation desk to make another small, maybe 1-to-1 pull-out or office space. And then we took away the language lab because now we have students with devices in their hands. We took away the language lab, and now that is a teaching space. And then at the high school, we're using the language lab as a full-time teaching space now. We consolidated office spaces and we did this pre-COVID. We had about 7 of our special education teachers in one office, one classroom. We converted a classroom into an office to make more space. And then we also had the ELL teacher in that room just for office space. And then they would branch out and go into classrooms when teachers were off period. And then dressing rooms that were set up and made for the plays and drama are now office spaces, and then we're using the auditorium daily. So I know last year, a lot of the conversation was you're using this as an excuse, but I just need the general public to know that 1, where our enrollment is growing, 2, our space is shrinking, and we are making modifications to do our best to accommodate the students as best we can. So I would stop sharing again, and I would afford people the opportunity to ask questions, but those are the numbers as of today in terms of our enrollment. Any questions?
Ada, do you want to remember Rosemary?
Wow. Well, that's our enrollment has returned and is continuing to go up. I'm wondering where we stand with the resources that we got. Elaine, Dr. Craig, you may be able to help me remember where that came from, those funds, but the funds that we acquired for converting spaces, and where are we with using those funds? It sounds like you've done a lot of construction, and do we have any left for if we need to do more?
Yeah, we had funds approved by Capital Improvement Planning Committee, but Superintendent Jett and Assistant Superintendent Dexter can give you more specifics on how much of that is expended.
Okay, thank you.
I could get you the total cost, but at this point, I don't have it because some of the stuff, the petitions just came in this week, and now we need those installed in which we ordered them a while ago, a long time ago. But if anybody knows, if you ordered furniture, you ordered anything with plastic, this and that, because of the pandemic and because of what happened down in Texas with the plastic industry and some of that closing down, a lot of things have been delayed. We ordered stuff, people promised that it would be here on time, and unfortunately we're held at their mercy. Yes.
No, I don't want to restate the obvious, but we've been making these presentations about enrollment for the whole time that I've been on school committee, which is, I'm in my 6th year. And I thought a couple of years ago that we had really exhausted every space because we were taking the art rooms and the music rooms, etc. And now this should make it so clear to everyone who watches this, and I hope this presentation is going to be put on the website so that people can access it. who aren't watching this meeting or who don't watch this meeting when it replays, I don't know where, after this year, when enrollment goes up yet again, because it will, I don't know where we can go. You've clearly taken every nook and cranny. And first of all, applause to you and to Bill Ritchie and the others involved for really looking at this with vision and finding all of those places, because I'm not sure I would have thought of putting a classroom on the stage in Glover, or taking that side of the Pierce Library and reworking it. But there we are. So thanks for the overview. And I even knew some of this yesterday from the finance meeting, but this was even more detailed and you covered even more spaces. So it's just even, the situation's even more dire than I had thought.
And if I could add to that, it's not a much of will our enrollment grow? It's a matter of how much, because folks need to remember there's been presentations talking about the 40B projects that are coming to the town in a couple of years. Those are 2 and 3 unit homes that are going to be online. And once you get to 3 units, they definitely anticipate students. 2 units, that's debatable. Some people might want a home office and things like that, but definitely 3 units is going to net additional students coming to the community. And where we're public schools, we are open doors and we welcome everybody. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how much will it grow. Any additional questions?
I just think we're going to have to go back to looking at the things we talked about before. I know we looked at the portable classrooms. I know they're not cost effective. I know there's not a lot of space for them, even on this, on the grounds of the district, but we are going to eventually bump up into a capacity issue that we simply can't address by accommodating and adapting spaces. We looked into renting spaces, that didn't work out. So I know that we have the facilities committee, and I imagine that will be a large part of the conversations, in addition to the school building committee, about what we're going to do about the space and moving forward for next academic year. I thank you all for your creativity and innovation for this coming year. It's a blessing and a challenge, right?
And then sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. Sorry about that. The next thing I want to talk about, which I know wasn't talked about a lot last year for a wide variety of reasons, which I'll talk about in a second, but I just want to go over again. If you bear with me, get back to this slide deck. And what I might do is include this slide deck in the weekly blog that goes home, and we'll put it on the website so folks would know, minus the questions. I'll take that out. That's just a marker for me to go. So there was a lot of questions about the transportation this year, for this coming year. Registration opened on Monday, June 7, 2021. For those that don't know, Milton Public School contracts for 10 buses for First Student Bus Company out of Randolph, Mass. The 10 buses services all 6 Milton Public Schools in the morning and in the afternoon. There's 3 runs. The first run is Pierce Middle School and the high school. They're the first one. Collycott and Cunningham is the second run, and Glover and Tucker is the third run. This year, when the registration opened, we had approximately 1,400 students sign up for transportation. Out of the 1,400 students, 120, and that might be down slightly because we were able to accommodate a few slots on a few routes, but that might be down. That's 120 of them remain on the wait list. The vast majority of those students on the wait list, Pierce Middle School and Milton High School. And some of the challenges of where students live, coupled with being on the wait list, is posing a big challenge for us. Was this a concern last year? Some people said that. It wasn't a concern last year because we were in the remote and hybrid model, so it didn't get discussed a lot. Also, remember, 20% of the student population chose remote for the year, And due to the hybrid model, students only needed transportation every other day because half the population was in. Some parents also, parents and guardians chose not to access the bus at all because they had concerns about COVID-19. And although we returned to school on April 5th for elementary and April 12th for middle and the high, some students still chose not to ride the bus at that point in time. Obviously, we were just now coming back. A lot of people were uncertain about it. So that's why it wasn't a concern last year with the transportation. So who do we transport? Massachusetts student transportation policy says we are required to transport all students in kindergarten through 6th grade who live more than 2 miles away from their school that they are assigned to. Any additional spots after that come as needed. As of today, we have accomplished all of the students that fall into this category. In other words, every student that we are required to transport to school, we have accomplished that. But we still have a challenge with about approximately 115, 120 students. And so that has been a challenge. And we know at this point in time, some families are upset. We understand your concern. We understand your complaint. But I do want folks to know, prior to my appointment as superintendent, even as a high school principal, even as a middle school principal many years ago, transportation has always been a challenge. We've always asked for extra buses. We've gone to the Milton Foundation for Education to try to secure funding for it. We've tried every avenue. So I will guarantee you, we're going to ask for transportation in our school budget coming up, again, in addition to other things that we need. I'm not asking because we want them. We're asking to meet that minimum threshold because that's what we need. So what are some of the options that we're exploring? Adding an additional bus. I have to give a lot of credit to Laurie Dunn in central office, along with Amy Dexter, in working with folks, but trying to find out different options, possibly adding a shuttle bus. What happens is some people might say, well, so-and-so got a bus on the other side of town. It all depends on what route it is and how many students live in that area or on that route. So that's where the challenge comes. And then we can't have one bus on one side doing stops way over here and then going all the way across town. That's always a challenge as well. And then my last plea for folks, I know a lot of people sign up for buses, and I notice as a principal, the buses get full, and then 2 weeks into the year, the buses aren't that full because people are holding those spots, but we got to maintain them. So if you absolutely do not need a bus, we ask you to please reconsider as to whether or not you want to sign up. And if you decide to forfeit your seat, we'll give you a full return. Not asking, not mandating, but I'm asking, not mandating, but that's one of the options. And then my final statement, which is not a part of this, every year I ask people for their patience. It will be a little bit of a delay in some of the buses because it's the first time people are coming back. Now you got to remember, more people are coming back, and it's been 2 years since all of this traffic has been coming into the buildings all at once. So it's usually the beginning of the year to work out some of the kinks. There might be a few delays. We ask you, if you're taking a bus, have your children out there a little bit earlier to time it. And then also the first time we experience a snowstorm, that generates another concern from parents. So I want to be clear that we're well aware of it. That's something that we communicate with the bus company on an ongoing basis, but we ask for your patience as we start the year off, and we're going to continue to explore ways to try to enhance the transportation and provide it for as many people as possible. So that's the transportation update. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to ask questions again about the transportation.
Member White?
So maybe, James, you can talk a little bit more detail about what the actual cost of a bus costs the district and how the fees that parents pay cover a part of it or a portion of it. Could you detail that just so people who might be listening would know that?
I would have Assistant Superintendent Amy Dexter cover that piece.
Sure. So one bus costs approximately $75,000 a year. the fee for a rider is $275 for the year, but a large majority of our riders fall into the K through 6 free transportation guideline. So even though we have registered 1,000 students, not all of those 1,000 students pay for the bus. So a lot of it's absorbed by the operating budget.
Mhm.
I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but if you just did simple math, if you had 100 kids riding the bus, it would be $750 each. We only have 48 at the high school level that can fit on a bus compared to about 72 at the middle school level. They allow 3 middle school students per seat, only 2 middle school, high school students per seat. So that's why the challenge at the middle school and high school is much more difficult to fit all of the riders because we can't fit as many students on those. So if half the riders, 750, 10 buses, 750,000 a year. And if half of those riders pay, it doesn't even come close to paying or even half of it. I'm sorry, I don't have the actual numbers done out.
If I could interject for a point of clarification, and I know what Assistant Superintendent Dexter means, she meant to say 72, 73 students at the elementary level.
Oh, yeah. What did I say?
Size and body composition. And then as you get older, obviously students are getting bigger, bigger book bags and things like that. And so it's only 2 per bench, where at the elementary level, there's 3 students per bench. So those buses could be packed up to 73 students on the bus. And we're able to do that because there's no social distancing on the bus. Students need to be masked all times and windows need to be open. Yes.
In the past, we've used a kind of ballpark number, which, as you know, you're saying, Assistant Superintendent Dexter, is never completely accurate because you don't know how many on the bus are actually paid for out of the operating budget and how many are paying. But we've used as a kind of rule of thumb between 10 and 12,000 off of each bus would be paid for by student riders, which leaves us with $65,000 per bus, which is one of the things, not to jump ahead on my finance report, but one of the things that we talked about at finance yesterday. It can't be paid for out of the CARES or ESSER funds that we have because it's not COVID related. This is an enrollment crisis issue like we were just dealing with the buildings. And so, we have a situation this year where I don't know if we can afford, if we can literally find the money to pay for an additional bus this year. But certainly, as Superintendent Jett said, it will be tops on our list for FY23 budget proposal.
And it won't be a vertical list. It's going to be a horizontal list because everything is going to be at the top of the budget because there's so much that we definitely do need. So,
does anyone else have any questions about transportation? This is a sore subject. In 2019, 2020, before the pandemic, at the start of that academic school year, then Chair Varela and I had a public forum hearing with parents about transportation because we encountered these same issues then. We had advocated that year in the budget, if Dr. Craighead remembers, for an additional bus that we did not get in the budget. And we ran into similar problems. We had some creative solutions around using, getting passes for the town buses or the buses that
MBTA, yeah.
MBTA buses.
Yeah,
Which, some parents were not happy with. Of course, I understand that, particularly during a pandemic. And I recognize, and I guess the part that's a little frustrating for many parents that have written to us is that they have 4 children or they have 3 children and 2 of them got on the bus and 1 of them didn't. And so that's hard for them to understand. How does that happen? We're the same family in the same house. And sometimes it's the middle schooler and the high schooler has the bus, and the elementary kids, of course, if you live 2 miles away, you have the bus. So It's very hard for families because if you can't get your child to school, they can't get to school. And you might not have family to help you. You might not have a way that you can get your child to school. So I feel bad about this situation. I personally myself feel bad because I feel like we spent a lot of time in the spring on the budget talking about other things that were important, but some things that were not, that were a distraction from the issue of transportation that reared its head again this year because we have more students coming to school. And so I can only say that I'm sorry. That doesn't really bring anyone any comfort because if you can't get your child to school, they can't get to school. And so we are working on some solutions to try and alleviate that for families. If you don't need the bus, please let the district know so that we can trade out that seat for someone who does. And we will continue to explore options of if we can find money for another bus, if we can have a shuttle bus. I mean, I really think brainstorming and trying to come up with a solution is really important. These are families that are on the other side of the high school and the middle school. They mostly live out on the East Milton side or maybe out further, you know, in the parts up by Houghton's Pond in that area. So yeah, there's not much we can say about it. It is a constant struggle. You're right. I know you all feel that we should do better. We try, we advocate for it, but some of it has to do with the funding as well and what we can manage to have in the budget. Member Rosemarin?
There's been mention of shuttle buses a couple of times, and I don't really understand what those are and how that would help us. Can you explain what you mean by shuttle buses?
So go ahead.
So what I've been trying to work with First Student is to try to get the high school, middle school bus to maybe add an extra early run and add a late bus after. The challenges with that is in order to get all of the subsequent runs for the elementary school to school in time, these children will arrive at Milton High and Pierce Middle School at 6:45 in the morning. The buildings aren't open, they're not staffed. Little bit easier to accommodate that at the high school level than at the middle school level. And a lot of these children that are on the wait list are in the middle school. So that's why the shuttle bus, I thought in the beginning, was going to be a really good solution because it does have a significant lower cost. But that's something that I want to continue to explore for next year because there may be a lot of high school students out there that would really like that option because they can get to school and do a morning club or work with their teachers for extra help or stay for an hour after school to do one of the clubs. So unfortunately for this year, it sounds like it's, sorry about that, sounds like it's probably not work out because we've already assigned seats and it's just not a good option at the middle school level because we don't offer programs in the morning or every day after school. So that was the thought behind a shuttle.
And if I could just add to that, Chair Abahart, you made a statement saying you wish we had this conversation in the spring and talked about it. We don't know what we don't know. And from last year to this year, our enrollment grew 188 students. So we don't know until June 7th what's going to happen. And so if you asked me last year if I thought our enrollment would grow from last year, from June or January of this past year to this year by 188 students, and it might go up another 40 because those are the another 40, so it could go up to 238 or something like that. It's a lot, and then you also got to look at your elementary, your kindergarten or first grades who parents may have driven them to school and now they're letting them spread their wings and might want to put them on the bus because they have it. So those are a lot of unknowns, and we're just restricted by the 10 buses. So for those who might listen to this and say, well, why didn't you plan for that? It's hard to plan for a moving target. And so we're doing the best that we can, but hopefully we'll secure some additional transportation down the road.
Yeah, and I totally respect that, what you're saying, Superintendent Jett. It's just that particular forum that we had and hearing we had with parents was hard. And it's hard to hear parents struggle and know that they might not have a lot of options. And so it's wishful thinking on my part that we could have more advanced notice about that, but we're going to just have to think ahead for the future since the enrollment is continuing to grow, how we're going to manage those pieces moving forward. But I do appreciate all your efforts, and I thank the parents that they're reaching out. We're trying to support and answer the questions the best that we can, and provide some solutions as well.
I had one more comment about the enrollment. I was just looking at the NESDEC projections. NESDEC is the organization that does our enrollment projections each year, and they're really seen as kind of the gold standard for enrollment projections around the state. And last year was a real anomaly year because of the pandemic, and the enrollment dropped substantially because of the things that Superintendent Jett described. And the projections from NESDEC based on last year's lower enrollment for this year, let me just pull it up, was 4352, including pre-K. So we're now over 100 more than what they projected. What we've been saying in the school building committee is we've been assuming that our enrollment projections will be closer to what they were the year before. The 2019 enrollment projections projected 4522 for this year for pre-K to 12. So, you know, I think we're just on our way back up to where those projections were, and I think we were all kind of surprised to see the enrollment projections go down post-pandemic, and we all kind of knew that wasn't going to happen, that it was going to go back up, especially with all of these 40B projects in the pipeline that aren't even accounted for in the NESDEC projections. So I think with confidence, we should plan based on the 2019 enrollment projections until such time as we have our 2021 projections, which will be later this fall. And I'm guessing that they will look much more like our 2019 projections. And then we can plan based on that. We'll still be faced with the same problems, but we'll have more confidence knowing what enrollment numbers are going to be.
So thank you, guys. And if you don't mind, I'll move on to the next item. The next item is asking for your approval of the district physician. Unfortunately, Dr. Patricia Guglietta, who was the district physician last year, supports the schools. She resigned. Obviously, it was a very eventful year for a lot of folks. She resigned, but we're pleased to push forward a gentleman who is a Milton resident, Joel Hudgkins, and he has his BS from Texas A&M, University of Texas A&M, and then he also has his MD in medicine in the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. I believe you guys have a copy of the resume, and I would ask for your endorsement to put Mr. Hudgkin as part of the supporting team for the Milton Public Schools.
So moved.
Okay. Yes. All right. So move. Can I have a second, and then we can have discussion?
Second.
Okay. All right. Member White.
I just seconded it.
Superintendent, does anyone have any questions for Superintendent Jett before I ask my question? Superintendent Jett, can you explain to the viewing public how you go about finding a school physician, since some people might not be familiar as to why, and that this is a requirement of the Commonwealth that the school committee approve the appointment. But if you could just give a little background, that might be helpful for people to understand.
Yeah, so I'm actually glad you asked that. I want to make it very clear. That's not a full-time physician that's going to be working in the Milton Public Schools. it is someone for a small stipend. A lot of districts have it. In fact, a lot of districts right now are having difficulty finding people to fulfill this role. Basically, they support the nurse's office. They're the ones that sign off to allow us to collect medicine, allow us to give us the approval to administer certain medicine, and then they serve as a support for our nurses if there's a question that they may have. These are practicing physicians. Some of them, in some communities, they might have their own practice, or they might be working for what are your big hospitals in town, or some of your local hospitals on the outskirts of the Boston area. But it's a nice person to kind of go to be a support for the Milton Public Schools. And it is public knowledge, it's a small stipend for the entire year of approximately $10,000.
And Member Rosemarin?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Dr. Hudgens is an attending physician in the emergency room at Children's Hospital in Boston. He's highly qualified, and I happen to have a cousin who is also an attending physician at the emergency room at Children's Hospital. So I asked him about Dr. Hudgens, and he said he is a star. He's a wonderful doctor, and it just sounds like a fantastic pick for us. So thank you for finding him, and look forward to having him on board.
So if I could just make one clarifying statement, because this past year was my first year. Prior to that, I didn't really have that much knowledge as to what the district physician would do in my role as a principal. Maybe Kim Coughlin could add a little more insight specifically on how she dealt with Dr. Guglietta, which is probably one of your more busiest years. She did sit on the COVID metrics advisory team for a short period of time as well.
Yeah, sure. So I think you touched on a little bit about that it is a mandate through the Department of Public Health to have standing orders. So all of our nurses' offices do have to have a standing order written by a physician, and that's to give things like emergency medication, the EpiPens that we might give, inhalers, Narcan, as well as regular wound care, triaging in emergency situations, all of those things that nurses do. It's not in our scope of practice to do that without being seen by a physician who writes those orders. So that is a part of the job, as well as camps, the Camp Cunningham that we run, the ESY summer enrichment programs that we run throughout the district. Those all have to have nursing orders written and then signed for by a school physician. In addition to that, the school physician works, like Superintendent Jett alluded to, with the school nurses. If for some reason one of our students does have complex medical care, and that school physician does work as a liaison between their primary pediatrician or primary physicians and the school nurses, sometimes school guidance, to get that student what they need for their school day. That school physician also works as a liaison and sometimes works along with our special education department, and our director, Susan Maselli, does utilize them as well to go over needs of students that do fall under her umbrella of an IEP or a medical 504 plan.
Thank you. And so Superintendent Jett, do you advertise for this position? Do you have like a pool of people that superintendents look to? I'm just trying to educate the community on how that decision comes to be.
Yes, we advertise, we try to recruit, we coordinate with other superintendents that might have someone that might have the time to do it if you can't find someone. And it's very limited. It is a small stipend. It is a huge responsibility working with a district of close to 44, well, not close to, exactly 4,406 students. And so, and then the faculty and staff. So it is advertised. This was obviously a very tough year. And given a lot of the pushback, that probably deterred a lot of people from applying. But we did have a couple of candidates, and Joel Hudson, he was the person that emerged as our top candidate.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve Dr. Joel Hutchins as the school physician. Is it for one academic year, Superintendent Jett?
Yes, it is.
For one academic year. The motion has been moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Member White? Yes. Member Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member Rose Marin,
Yes.
and Margaret Eberhardt, yes. That's 6-0. Wonderful. Welcome to the community, Dr. Joel Hutchkins. We look forward to having you as part of our team.
Thank you all. And then the last item under the superintendent's report is the approval of the 2021-2022 student handbooks and staff handbook. I believe all of you had a copy of those books in advance for review. So I turn it over to you, Chair Eberhardt.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett, for that very comprehensive, very detailed update. Lots of things to think about as we enter into the academic year. So you all received copies of the handbooks. I know the handbooks are a lot. I know that's a mild understatement, actually. And I know that you could take a lot longer time to review them. So obviously, this is a procedural process that you have to, the handbooks have to be approved by the school committee. So we can start with the staff handbook. I can make a motion to approve the staff handbook. We can have a second, and then we can have a discussion about any questions that you might have. So may I have a motion to approve the staff handbook for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
All right, seconded?
Second.
All right, let's have a discussion about the staff handbook. Does anyone have any particular questions relating to the staff handbook? Nope, it's pretty comprehensive, and it includes all of the pertinent policies for the district, as well as information about negotiations and the contracts, evaluations, and supervision policies. Okay, so this is a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member Rose Marin?
Yes.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so the next handbook on our agenda is the Milton Public Schools Elementary Handbook. So the elementary handbook is one handbook that goes out to all of the elementary school parents, and then each school has like a little handbook that they give, not a handbook, but like a little guide that they give to the families about particulars for their school, like who's the PTO and that kind of stuff. So the motion on the table is to approve the Milton Public Schools Elementary Handbook.
So moved.
Okay, seconded?
Second.
Okay, does anyone have a discussion or questions about the elementary handbook? Member Rose Marin?
Yeah, I had a question about something that was both in elementary and in the Pierce, I believe.
Okay.
Under the health and wellness section, there's an illness section that was all in red, and I'm not sure why that was. I believe it was new language relating to COVID, but I wasn't sure, was that going to become black? Was it highlighted in red because it was a new change, or what exactly?
I would venture to guess it was probably highlighted in red to bring to your attention that it was new language that was added. And I should have said this in the beginning, that these handbooks are not solely approved by the school committee, well, approved by the school committee, but also vetted by legal counsel for students through Murphy, Lamry, and Murphy, attorney's office. So yeah, but I remember Rosemary, and I just want to say, yes, it's probably to bring to your attention new information.
New language. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about the handbook, elementary handbook? Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Member Rose Marin?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And me, Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Okay, wonderful. And now the Pierce School Handbook. The motion on the table is to approve the Pierce School Handbook for the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Seconded, anyone?
Second.
Okay, so let anyone have any questions or comments about the Pierce Middle School Handbook? Dr. Carroll.
Yeah, I just want to share that. So this is obviously my first time sort of participating in this review of the handbooks. And as I was reading through particularly this one and the high school one, it's I think just so important that we're thinking about this in the context of other information that we have. And for us right now, that's our data including from our equity audit report, which I know we will have more information forthcoming on that. We've already had the overview presentation. But our data going back for years before, and especially reading through the very detailed policies and procedures on student discipline, it was occurring to me that, we know unequivocally that we have these disproportionate outcomes for students, particularly students of color, in receiving consequences for student discipline. And so that just reminds me, and as I'm looking through the handbooks, the policies are one thing, and how they are clearly laid out, what they are, and then how they are carried out is something different. And I know that we are early in a process as a community and a district and a school committee, kind of thinking about how we can actually mitigate and address these unacceptable disproportionalities. But I couldn't really approve this handbook without saying that, because, here we are. And I think many of these policies and procedures have been in place for some years. They've gotten us, or at least partially, they've participated in getting us where we are, along with how educators in the buildings interpret these and carry these policies out. So I will vote to approve this handbook, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, Member Ross-Denny.
Just to add to Lizzie's concern, I know that the Pierce Middle School has been working on restorative justice, and I know that there will be some sort of update from the school as they present, as each school presents over the course of the school year. I would love to know where the plan is going for restorative justice and where it is at the time of that presentation, so we can have a conversation about how will that discipline policy change in light of it. Currently, the policy does mention that the principal has some autonomy to implement restorative justice practices, but without a lot of detail what that means. We're working by trusting that our administrators and our teachers are working on these things, and having a status update will allow us to understand their progress and how those policies might change before we see this manual again next fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else have any comments about the Pierce handbook? I would agree with Dr. Carroll and Member Ross-Denny that when you read through the two upper grades, middle school and high school handbooks, there's more about discipline and policies in that area. And I do think they need a look at as we think about our equity lens, restorative justice, and cultural competency in education. And so I like you both, I think that a review of these policies and a different manual should be put forth to the school committee next summer. That will be the expectation, I believe, of the school committee moving forward. So anyway, the motion right now is to approve the Pierce Middle School 2021-2022 handbook. This is a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Ross-Denny?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Eberhardt, yes. That's 6-0. Thank you. And I'm making a motion to approve the Milton High School handbook for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the Milton High School handbook, apart from the one that we just had about the combination of those two handbooks? Okay, this is a roll call vote. Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Ross-Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes, 6-0. Thank you all so much for reviewing the handbooks, and we can certainly make that part of our goals as well to move forward with different considerations for that. And thank you, Superintendent Jett, for your very thorough report.
Thank you.
We are going to move now to Citizen Speak. I will remind everyone that we have allocated 15 minutes for Citizen Speak in our meeting. Citizen Speak is an opportunity for members of the community to come and raise any questions or concerns you might have about an issue, or to share some comments or thoughts you might have about something happening in the district. Each member is asked to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address as you are introduced. And please remember to refrain from referring to any one particular person in your comments. Please respect the privacy of individuals of this community, and that includes members of your own family and your children. And do not mention anyone by name that works for the Milton Public Schools, and address all your comments to the chair. And we look forward to hearing from you. So if there's anyone here for Citizen Speak, you can raise your hand and someone will move you up to share your thoughts. I hope there's someone here to move them up. Yes, Amy.
I think I might have the ability to.
Okay, wonderful.
Do you want me to try?
Yes, if there's someone whose hand is raised, please promote them up.
So we do have Rachel Gomes Slade. I'm going to try to promote. Hold on.
Thank you.
I think I just say allowed to talk.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I wasn't more clear about that.
Okay, Rachel, I think you should be all set if you'd like to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Ms. Slade, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I had asked a few weeks ago about the lockers being able to be used over at Pierce. I understand last year it was COVID and surfaces, and plus the kids were only there half days. This year, it's a little more rough. My son was one of the ones not accepted for the bus. So there will be a long walk to school, possibly wet clothes, umbrellas, things like that, having to be stored somewhere, not having to bring them on full days of school now, not half days. In addition, the alternative, he's going to have his lunch with him. And now the alternative is also that you have to place your backpack on the dirty ground, which is not just dirty from whatever COVID or whatever. It's just a dirty ground. No one cleans the ground between classes, instead of putting it in a clean locker, which seems a lot more sanitary. It just seems like it would be a good start to the school year, just to have these lockers. And I'm just unclear why we're not being able to have them.
Thank you, Ms. Slade. I should have mentioned that we don't respond at Citizen Speak. So I apologize for that, but I will take your question to Superintendent Jett, and I will get an answer for you before tomorrow.
No worries.
I'm still new.
What, tomorrow?
All right, tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's a very good point.
I don't see anybody else with their hand raised, but if anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand. Did you hear me say that? Yeah. There's nobody else.
All right.
With their hand raised.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Dexter, and thank you, Ms. Slade, for your question. We will address your important question tomorrow, the day after. All right, so the next thing on the report, on our agenda, I believe, is the chair's report. All right, so I just want to give a really quick update on our school committee retreat, which we had on the 3rd and 4th of August. We met at the high school. It was an open meeting on both nights. We had one community member who had, yes, Dr. Carroll. Yes, Dr. Carroll.
Sorry to interrupt you. It just appears that, I don't know if this was someone left from Citizen Speak, but Mr. Burke here, who's a panelist.
Oh, okay. Sure. Superintendent Dexter, are you still here? Oh, there you are.
So I was looking at the attendees list.
Yep.
I don't see anybody with their hand raised on the
Okay.
panel. There is a Rob Burke present, but his hand is not raised.
Okay.
Perhaps if, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
So,
Did
Mr. Burke, are you
say
here to
something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, how you doing, folks? Happy summer to you. I've got one lady right there, and can I look at the panel? I hear you. I can see one lady. I can't see everybody. Do you hear me, ma'am?
Mr. Burke, I think you have to do that on your view on your screen.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, we can. Okay, chairperson. Just a quick question. We have approximately 50% males in the Milton Public Schools. Why don't we have 50% male teachers in the Milton Public Schools? Wouldn't that be equitable? If we have males, I think it'd be a good idea to have males teach males and females teach females. So why do we have the discrepancy of that? Do you have an answer?
Mr. Burke, we don't respond to.
Of course. Oh, I'm sorry. There are those rules. I'm sorry. So what should I, you can just nod your head. Should I send you an email regarding the equity of actually having males teaching males and females teaching females? I think that would be a good idea since we have a problem with equity in Milton. And I know the junior ROTC would love to come into Milton to teach the males how to be gentlemen, be polite, not be victims of this, whatever you do with these schools. And I'll be happy to pass that on. And I think that would save a lot of money since you guys have over 65% of the total budget of Milton you guys control. And I'm going to address you folks now as the new name is, you're the HR department for the Mass Teachers Union. Okay, that's what you guys do. That's your new job description, the HR department. I appreciate the time and can't wait to see you face to face. And are you going to keep on doing the Zoom stuff, or are you going to actually come out and see people in the near future? I know you don't address anything. That's right. That's right. Okay, that's it. Is my 3 minutes up? You can just nod your head, ma'am, because I don't have a clock in front of me. You can go. How much?
Yep. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you. So we'll be looking forward. I'll send that. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
All right. So that's the end of Citizen Speak. Thank you, Dr. Carroll, for pointing out that we missed people in the Citizen Speak. All right. So now back to our school committee retreat. So we had the school committee retreat on the 3rd and the 4th of August. It was a posted meeting, and we did have one community member who attended one night at the meeting. It was a very productive meeting, I thought. We spent a lot of time looking at the goals that we want to set for the district for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. We also talked a little bit about the superintendent evaluation process, and we talked about ways that we can engage the community moving forward as a school committee. So at our next school committee meeting, which is going to be on, I think it's September 8th, we are going to present our goals for discussion. And then at the following school committee meeting on September 22nd, we will vote to approve the goals. I will say that the goals are centered on teaching and learning, on community engagement, family and community engagement, social emotional learning, and also looking at all of those things with an equity lens. We recognize one of the things that we talked a lot about at the retreat was this year is an opportunity for all of us to reset and rethink about the way that we engage with each other and with the community. And one of the things that we recognize as a school committee is that our role as school committee members is a little bit confusing to the community. So we have public meetings. So we have meetings that are in public, but we don't have meetings with the public. Our meetings are opportunities for us to engage in discussion and debate about the important issues in front of the district. So we recognize that we need to do a little bit more and provide opportunities for engagement with the community. And that could be through public forums, through public hearings, and opportunities to have question and answer sessions with the community. So we're looking forward to presenting those at our next school committee meeting, and then having an opportunity to discuss them as a group and then approve them at the following meeting. Did anyone want to share anything about the retreat at all at this time? Nope. Great. Well, I look forward to sharing our goals with the community and then voting on them the following meeting. And our Superintendent Jett will also be sharing his goals for the district at our September 22nd school committee meeting. So we look forward to hearing from Superintendent Jett and hearing the goals of the district. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is a vaccination discussion. So I wanted to bring this to the school committee to have a discussion about vaccinations for Milton Public School employees and our thoughts and considerations around that and what we would like to do moving forward with a vaccine requirement for the district, for the Milton Public Schools employees. So this is an opportunity for us to discuss that and see where that discussion leads and possible opportunities to make some choices for the district. Would anyone like to start? Dr. Craighead and then Member Ross Denny.
In case the public doesn't yet know, the union that supports the Milton Educators Association Union, the Mass Teachers Association, has come out in support of mandates for vaccinations for its members, and so has the National Education Association. In my opinion, it makes good sense to support that. It makes good, it supports the science. It supports recommendations by the CDC and many other well-respected entities. Okay, I'll leave it at that. There are other things I would say, but I'll just leave it at that.
Member Ross Denny, sorry.
No, I'm appreciative of the fact that we're having this discussion so early, because we know that our younger children will not be vaccinated. And if we can minimize their exposure to any adult who may be carrying the virus, it's in our best interest. And given that DESE has not given superintendents the autonomy to transition to remote instruction, we will be at significant risk if a number of teachers have to quarantine or self-isolate because of exposure to the virus. I think it's in our best interest to have a vaccine requirement, but with the accommodation for people who are at health risk, whether it's the testing that we now have in place for test and stay can be used at the teacher level. I think we should be supportive of a vaccination requirement as long as we have the capacity to support people who have underlying health conditions that prohibit them from successfully getting the vaccine and surviving it without significant risk to their health.
Thank you, Member Ross Denny. Member White?
I also support a mandate for vaccinations for all the staff at the public schools. I think it's really important that we do everything we can as adults to protect children who don't have the option of vaccination at this time. And I do know, though, that in the field of education, they have one of the highest rates of vaccinations at this point. So I'm not thinking that there are going to be too many teachers in Milton that are not vaccinated, but certainly would support asking for vaccination for all our staff.
Yes, Member Rosemary.
Yes, I also support trying to move forward with a vaccine mandate in Milton. I believe we know that vaccines are the best way to reduce COVID-19 in the population. They protect recipients from serious infection, hospitalization, and death. Decreasing the amount of circulating virus also lessens the opportunity for the virus to continue to mutate, causing additional problems like we're seeing now with the Delta variant. The FDA has granted full approval of the Pfizer vaccine just this past week, so we can be fully confident of its safety and effectiveness. We know now that we're bringing everybody back and in these overcrowded situations that with the Delta variant, that is highly transmissible, much more so than the original strain, that we really need to do everything that we can. As was mentioned, our whole elementary population is ineligible for a vaccine at this point. So they are vulnerable, and it is our job to keep our students and staff safe. The federal and state governments are leaving it to us at the local level to make these important decisions. And I think we should make this important decision and move forward with it.
Anyone else want to share any thoughts? Dr. Carroll?
I'm glad we're having this conversation. It sort of began at the policy subcommittee meeting a couple of weeks ago. Member Rosemarin shared a perspective like she just articulated, which is it seems we all are in agreement on this as a full school committee, that this is the best way forward. We've said many times our top priority is maintaining safe, full in-person learning for our students. And we know that the layered approach is the way to do that. So we've talked about the mask mandates, and this is an important element as well, along with the ventilation, which we've also been working on, and especially because social distancing will be quite challenging, if not impossible, given our enrollment. So yeah, I'm also in support of this.
Wonderful. Anyone else have anything they would like to share or add? The way that this works is that in order for us to, so of course, the way it would work is if we have a vaccine requirement or a mandate, we would vote on that. And then that would proceed to bargaining with the union on impact bargaining and collective bargaining on that, making provisions and accommodations for the things that Member Ross Denny mentioned, and also a timeline, because as we know, vaccines take time. You can't just go and get the vaccine and then you're done, except if you get the one vaccine, I guess. But even then, there's still a time frame in which you have to do that. So if we're all in agreement, and I really haven't spoken, but I of course support a vaccine requirement for educators. I think it is the most responsible thing that we can do, particularly as the pandemic continues to evolve and as the variants continue to pose challenges for healthcare professionals. Superintendent Jett, you have your hand raised.
Yes, mandate or not, I think it's good for the general public to know that this is something that the MEA has advocated for since back in January, February, and March. Folks may not know this in the general public, but we held vaccination clinic for the Milton Public Schools faculty and staff. And so outside of the new staff and those who I think Member Ross Denny eloquently stated, I don't know everybody's health concerns or health conditions. So outside of that, I would say a vast majority of Milton Public Schools faculty and staff are already vaccinated, if I were to make a guess. But I do think the general public should know that that was something that a lot of educators were advocating for. So mandate or not, outside of a few outliers for whatever reason, you might have a vast majority of folks. And I think that's important for a community like Milton to know.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett, for sharing that. I really appreciate your you sharing that. And I have to say, I personally can speak for myself. I appreciate all the efforts you have made to work with the town and yourself and with Manatee Community Health around the vaccination clinics, around the testing, around the education piece for students, for staff, and for families. I think that has been extremely helpful in helping people feel more comfortable in returning their children to school, as we can see by the numbers of students that are now enrolling for the upcoming academic year. When there was a concern by the community that we would lose many students, I think that the way you have managed the district, along with the other superintendents, the principals and leadership team, speaks to that very well. So the way that this would work is we would have to make a motion to have a vaccine mandate for all Milton Public School employees, with provisions and responsible accommodations negotiated through collective bargaining.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, do we want to have any more conversation around this? Okay, so this is a roll call vote again. Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Eberhardt, yes. 6-0. Thank you all very much. I think this will go a long way to supporting educators and being in the safest possible environment and students and families as well. All right, that is the chair's report. We are going to move on to policy subcommittee and Dr. Carroll and Dr. Craighead and member Rosemary.
Okay, thank you, Chair Eberhardt. I know the meeting's going along already, so I'll try to be as concise as possible, although we do have a number of policies to consider together as a full school committee tonight. The policy subcommittee met in an open virtual meeting on August 11th. And because that discussion went beyond the scheduled time, and we also had a Google Meet setting that the subcommittee members were unable to continue the meeting after the superintendent had to leave. So as a result of that, we covered a lot of ground in that meeting on August 11th. We did have to post a second public meeting and re-adjourn to complete the agenda on August 16th. So this report sort of covers conversation and policies that moved out of the subcommittee on those 2 dates. The first policy that we are considering tonight is policy ECFA. That's our face covering policy. And it's important to note that we have had our face covering policy continuing in place from last year. And it is that policy, along with the DESE mandates, that have shaped the communication that Superintendent Jett has already shared about earlier in this meeting and has communicated to the community. So as Superintendent Jett has communicated, there are some revisions necessary for our existing policy. And by existing, I mean the one that was in place since last year. So we've been informed here not only by the most recent guidance of this week from Commissioner Riley, previous guidance that came out earlier in the summer, as well as guidance from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And when we met and considered this policy on August 11th, obviously, as a subcommittee, we voted to proceed with mandated indoor masking for Milton Public Schools. That was a continuation of the existing policy. A key update is that the change is that masks are now optional outdoors. So you'll see that reflected in the red line version. Masks required indoors, pre-K through 12, regardless of vaccination status, but optional outdoors. As before, exceptions will be made for students who have challenges wearing masks for medical, behavioral, or other reasons. And as Superintendent Jett explained, those exceptions will need to be approved by building principals in consultation with the school nurse or the Milton Board of Health. One change to the policy from last year to this is that we will be reviewing this policy every other month. And that means if we approve it here tonight, we would come back to it and review it at the end of October. And so that means that between now and the end of October, we will develop the process for that review. That would be based on guidance from the Milton Board of Health, community spread data at that time, and recommendations from the CDC and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And so with that, I will, I guess we have to make a motion, right, to consider this policy, and then it can be open for discussion.
You
So
also need to because it's a first reading, we need to make a special exception for that, right?
Yeah, we're doing that for all of the policies. Like you make it.
Okay, that's good.
Exception.
Want to
Yeah.
make sure that's
Yes.
clear.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
These are expedited. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Craighead. And yes, I am providing my first policy subcommittee report here tonight. So I thank everybody.
9 o'clock at night, sorry.
And grace. Yeah, so due, of course, to the timeliness of these policies, that is correct. We have considered these in the policy subcommittee, but we are voting on them as a first reading as a full school committee here tonight.
And as an expedited reading.
An expedited reading of these policies. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So
So would someone make a motion?
yeah, I'm making a motion to approve policy ECFA face covering policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. So would anybody like to comment or ask questions discuss on these policies? Member Ross Denny?
I just want to make one comment that reflects something that Superintendent Jett shared, which is many of our teachers don't live in the town. So when we do the review at the end of October, we should also consider the faculty and the state of their COVID status at that time. I don't think it will impact the way the amendments that you've made to the policy is written.
Thank you. I'll note that. Yes, Member Rosemary.
Two things. One is a minor housekeeping detail. At the very bottom of the policy, it has original policy approved as August 26, 2021. That should be 2020. It was last year that was originally approved. And my other question is, I think I did not understand in our policy committee meeting that we were going to be deleting the sections on the first page about the aspects of face masks, the ones that are encouraged and the ones that are not permitted in Milton schools. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I can just clarify that piece. So that text that you see there is pasted in from the existing policy. This kind of the body of this text is updated according to the current August 2021 MASC recommendations, which included some of the slight updates, including the updated citations and so forth that you see there. And so then at our subcommittee meeting, we had discussed inserting the Milton Public Schools masking kind of definitions of what counts as a mask and what doesn't. And so that language is not being deleted, that is being
added in,
retained.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Thank you.
So just to clarify for the community, what we sort of counted as a mask last spring is still what we're counting as a mask this year.
Right.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, so this will be a roll call vote to approve policy ECFA. Member White?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt?
Yes.
And Dr. Carroll, yes. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next policy, IJNDD. This is the social networking policy, and this had a very minor edit, which was simply to add Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok to the platforms listed under expectations for staff use of social networking in that existing policy. Are there, let's see, could we have a motion to approve policy IJNDD?
So moved.
Second.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this policy? Dr. Craighead.
Just happy we're keeping up with the times. It's nice to be current with what social media are out there. So this one made me laugh, and it's not often I laugh when I read an update to a policy.
Okay, so if we're ready, we can take a roll call vote on approving policy IJNDD. Member White,
Yes.
Member Rosemary,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Craighead,
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt,
Yes.
and Dr. Carroll, yes. So that's 6-0. Trying to keep this moving. Okay, the next policy is policy JFAA. And this is our residency policy. So just for a little bit of background, earlier in the summer, it came to our attention that our residency policy for Milton Public Schools was less detailed and frankly, less nuanced than many other high performing districts in our area. And so that led us to do some research into this policy, and the superintendent, as well as the policy subcommittee, conducted research to learn how some other districts approach exceptions to their policies. And that's really just in order to provide clarity for how to handle, unique different circumstances that might arise. And so we discussed these proposed exceptions at the subcommittee meeting. Our current policy has no language around exceptions, which does not provide clarity for exactly how to proceed in certain situations. And we learned that, as I said, many other districts have updated this policy more recently than we have and have attended to some of these different nuances. The McKinney-Vento Act, of course, was in our existing policy. That was an exception that was there under state law for homeless students. For this discussion, I would like to focus, if we can, on the first 3 exceptions that are listed in the proposal, the revised policy. The first one that you see there is for McKinney-Vento, and that is consistent with our existing policy. The second sort of exception there is for students who may move out of the district after April 1st of a given school year, that they may have the option to complete that one school year in Milton Public Schools if they are able to provide their own transportation. And then the third was an exception for rising seniors who may move right as the school year is about to or has already begun, that they may request to stay at Milton High School if they're able to provide their own transportation as well. The other 2 exceptions that are detailed in this policy, again, all of these proposed revisions were informed by examples from other districts like ours that have thought through this policy at length. And the other 2 exceptions there, though, are things that I am thinking we can discuss all of it now, but we may want to consider sort of postponing adoption of those 2 exceptions for further research and consideration perhaps at a later meeting, because they do involve, more complicated things to do with timelines for new dwellings being constructed in town, and various other paperwork and implications that might affect other departments or involve information from other departments in town. So that would sort of be my recommendation in bringing this policy forth. It was passed out of the policy subcommittee for our consideration here on a first reading as a full school committee. So if we could make a motion, if someone would make a motion to
Approve residency policy JFAA with the 3 exceptions or accommodations that you mentioned.
Second.
I think Superintendent Jett has his hand up.
Yes, Superintendent Jett. No, okay,
It's been up all, it's been
I
up.
forgot to lower it. I'm sorry.
no problem.
Um,
Yes, Dr. Craighead.
I just want to clarify for everybody watching this that all of those more specific aspects, those first three more specific aspects to the policy, all are at the discretion of the superintendent. So that, I mean, we just talked earlier tonight about our terrible enrollment crisis. So it would be based on the superintendent's recognition of the capacity of the schools, et cetera, and whatever other criteria he or she decided to consider. So.
Yes, Chair Eberhardt.
Dr. Carroll, I want to thank you and the policy subcommittee for taking this residency policy under consideration. I really appreciate the detail you gave to thinking about some of the challenges that families face, particularly as we've gone through the pandemic and families' lives have been truly disrupted by deaths in the family, by changes in residency, by things that were not anticipated by them as a family, and having some nuance for the superintendent to make a decision that would benefit a family for a few months before they leave town, in April of a school year, or for a senior as they are moving on but would like to complete their year here. I think that really speaks to a more nuanced, more thoughtful approach and really gives Superintendent Jett some options. Right now, our policy has no options. The McKinney-Vento is required by law. And of course, we honor that as we are required to do and as we would want to help families that are homeless and our veteran families. But having no options to make any considerations for family is just not that a great informed policy. So I really appreciate the thought and attention that went into making these considerations and providing the superintendent with some options, which is really what we're trying to do here, given all that we've been through and thinking forward as the kind of district that we wish to be.
Member White.
I just had a question. I certainly support and understand the clarifications and the options that you gave for specific situations that could be something that we want to give the superintendent a chance to evaluate the situation. But as a school adjustment counselor, recently retired for 20 years, I can think of other situations where, two students I used to work with, they lost both biological parents in one school year. So their whole family situation was in turmoil. And I think they were allowed to stay in the Dedham schools with family members who didn't reside in Dedham just because they thought it would be better for the children's well-being to stay with their familiar teachers and their familiar support staff and familiar friends for a period of time. So I actually think there could be other scenarios that happen that, I would support giving a superintendent some flexibility to make those kinds of decisions. So are we going to be looking at this a little bit more broadly, or are we keeping to the current exceptions?
Yes, so thank you so much. That's a thoughtful question. And well, I guess in general, I think of all our policies are sort of, living things in a sense. I mean, just because they're revised one time doesn't mean we have to wait,
So what I'd like to think about is,
so I think, if you want to, I think what would be good is the reason for thinking about these specific exceptions as things we want to expedite and consider here is really for the timeliness as we're launching a new school year. But I certainly would be very open to having a sort of larger conversation about how we might want to sort of fill out the revision of this policy, if you like, in the coming months.
That'd be great.
Thanks. Member Rosemary, you had your hand up.
Couple things. I just wanted to clarify. So is this policy being expedited as well as the other? This is an expedited approval?
Yes.
Both I see nodding heads. Yes. Okay. And the other comment is in relation to what Member Craig had mentioned, that it gives the superintendent the flexibility and authority to make some of these decisions, but it also gives him the responsibility to determine whatever process he wants to put in place to make those decisions fairly. And that was part of our discussion as well. And it's a challenge, but I think we all believe that our superintendent is up to the challenge.
Yes, definitely. And, we see here there are some parameters written into these updates. For example, that a family, in order to be considered under one of these exceptions, would need to inform the superintendent in writing of their move and request to stay enrolled within 5 business days of moving. So, I think we are attempting to provide some of that structure. Then Superintendent Jett, of course, and the building principals would take it from here for implementing. Are there any other, sorry, I have too many things I'm looking at. Chair Eberhardt, did you raise your hand?
No, I just wanted to say to Member White's point that those are really important things. And so whenever you make changes to policies that are more nuanced and provide exemptions and considerations, you do need to think about, Member White is an expert in those kinds of things because that's what she does. And so thinking about those policies in broader ways moving forward would require conversations with people who have more expertise in those areas than, let's say, I do as just a school committee member. So I think right now just providing these options is a very solid way to begin as we consider the district moving forward.
Okay, so this will be a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Sorry, this vote is to, let me be clear on this, because this is a vote to expedite the approval of policy JFAA as amended, the first 3 exceptions as written. So Member White.
Yes.
Member Rosemarin.
Yes.
Member Ross Denny.
Yes.
Dr. Craighead.
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt.
Yes.
And Dr. Carroll, yes. Okay. The last 2 are very quick minor changes. So next we have policy JLCB, that's our immunization policy. Could I please have a motion to
yes, so moved.
It's the motion to adopt this policy.
Yes, right. So moved. Yes.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Does anyone have, so this, let me first just explain. This is another expedited vote by the full school committee. We have a interest in getting this approved in a timely way before the start of school. We discussed this at the subcommittee meeting. There are minor changes, which are the addition of meningitis to the list of required immunizations, and also removing the language that this policy had last year about requiring the flu vaccine, because the Massachusetts Department of Public Health stopped requiring that last year. So that is the reason for removing that sentence about the flu vaccine. Are there any questions or comments about policy JLCB? Okay, so this will be a roll call vote. Member White.
Yes.
Member Rosemarin.
Yes.
Member Ross Denny.
Yes.
Dr. Craighead.
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt. Dr. Carroll. Yes. Last but not least, policy JLCF. This is our COVID pandemic policy. We are making simply minor edits to this from last year. And that is to have this policy in place for the 2021-2022 academic year. So it will expire in July of 2022. And the only other change was removing the sentence about approving changes between educational models, since as we've already discussed tonight, we are now operating on a full in-person model. Are there any questions or comments about this policy? Okay.
Motion to approve policy JLCF COVID pandemic policy with noted changes.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, a roll call vote. Member White,
Yes.
Member Rosemarin,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Craighead,
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt,
Yes.
and Dr. Carroll, yes. Okay, thank you all for your patience, and that concludes
Good job.
the first subcommittee report.
Dr. Carroll, thank you so much for taking policy on. It's a lot of work in these COVID times when there's a lot of things to consider. And it was a very thoughtful and thorough presentation. Thank you to Dr. Craighead and Member Rosemarin, the other policy subcommittee members. All right, thank you.
Sorry, I should have said that. Thank you. To
No,
my fellow
Great job,
subcommittee
Lizzie.
members.
All right, we are up to Finance Subcommittee. Dr. Craighead.
Chair Eberhardt, is there a prize for having the fastest
Yes,
report this
I'll be
evening?
dropping I brought some treats over for you.
Oh, okay, that's great. I'll take it. I'll take what I can get at this point. As I mentioned earlier, we spent quite a bit of time at the last finance subcommittee meeting, which was yesterday, talking about transportation, but I covered that. So the other major portion of our meeting yesterday was talking about the funds that we have remaining in CARES Act money and ESSER funds. So I'll go through those in a sort of ballpark way at this point. What we have remaining is a school allocation from the town of Milton CARES Act, and that amount is around $1.1 million. And please, Assistant Superintendent Dexter, if I get any of this wrong, correct me. You have your hand up. Okay, go ahead.
The allocation that was given to the schools from the town was about 1.1, but there's only about 117,000 that's unspent.
I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The amount that has to be that is left and has to be expended. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Dexter. That has to be expended by December 31st of this year is 117,000 and change. But so that money will be gone that money will be gone sooner than December 31st. But as of December 31st, it has to be expended. And then we're going to be left with 3 pots of money that are, or as Chair Eberhard likes to call them, buckets. We have 3 buckets of money that have not yet been expended. And those are ESSER funds. And ESSER 1, that bucket, the deadline for all of these is September 30th, and it's in successive years, okay? So the deadline for expending the ESSER 1 funds is September 30th of 2022. So a little over a year from now. And the balance remaining there after some expenditures that we've made is 90,000 and change. We originally got 112,000 and we've spent a little bit of it. ESSER 2 funds are better, they're a bigger bucket. We originally received 433,000 and change, and we haven't spent any of it yet. And it is good until September 30th of 2023. And ESSER 3 funds, the final, well, it's not, well, it's the final confirmed bucket that we have as of now, is almost $1 million, $951,690, and we haven't yet spent any of it. However, these monies have to, we have to be able to prove that they are addressing the impact of the pandemic, right? It has to be in some way COVID related for spending these funds. So there are lots of different ways we can address that impact. And it's a good amount of money. I think it's around 1.4 million-ish that we have, a little bit more than that. But those funds will go quickly if we're going to hire for term positions to make up for, let's say, learning loss during the pandemic. Between the actual salaries over 3 years, 2021 to 2024, as well as the benefits for even 3 positions, that pretty much expends the funds right there. So we have a lot of work to do thinking through that. Related to that also is that we're already starting to work toward the FY23 budget, and we talked about that yesterday at Finance as well. At our next Finance meeting, we're going to begin to lay out some dates and deadlines for when we're going to have the various stakeholders come and speak with us. That would be principals of the schools, as well as consolidated facilities, technology, special education, community schools, et cetera, about sort of what their plans are, what their needs are, and take those things into consideration for the FY23 budget. And of course, as I said earlier this evening, the bus will be on the list. And that's all I have tonight, unless anybody has any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Craighead? Dr. Craighead, thank you for the update. I call them buckets because in preschool you call someone a bucket filler, you know, like be a bucket filler, you know, fill people up with good things. So just a term I like. But thank you for that comprehensive report. Finance has lots of work to do. Dr. Craighead and Member Rostini and Member White, I know the 3 of you are the members of our finance subcommittee. I know that we also been having some joint finance subcommittee meetings with the subcommittee of the select board. And I know, Dr. Craighead, that those meetings have happened at times that you have not been available to attend. And I know that we're working on solidifying times that you might be able to attend. I know members Rostini and members White often can attend, but I know that's something that you're working on moving forward, because we continue to have joint meetings with the select board about finance issues moving forward.
Yeah, you know, I hope that those meeting times are, you know, that some of them at least are changed so that I can come to them, but they happen during the workday when I'm on the clock. So
it's hard. I really appreciate all the efforts that subcommittee members make to make time in their very busy days for scheduling. I know it's very hard. And I appreciate that some of you can go at times when someone else can. That's really a very collaborative spirit that we're working on. So thank you all so much for that. Okay, so the next thing on here is school building update, Member Rosemarin. I can try to share that picture that you sent me. I don't know that it's going to be exactly what you want. Do you want me to try?
Sure.
All right, because it came to me. Oh, hold on. I have to try to find it. I have to pull it up on my screen. Just a second. I went to the wrong thing. Hold on. I do spend a lot of time sharing screens at work, so it's kind of right. Like
there you go.
Okay, I mean it's sort of
yeah. That's great. Let's start with the top one. Thank you, Chair Eberhard. I have never shared my screen before, so I'm glad to have somebody else do it for me. So this is an update for you all from the School Building Committee, and you may have seen the cover of the Milton Times a few weeks ago that had one or both of these images on it, talking about a site that we have identified as being our choice for a new school building. And this is after really spending the last 2 years looking at sites all around town. And as you may know, that we have been told that we should look for a site that's between 4 and 6 acres. And sites of that size are very hard to find in the town of Milton. And we have really looked quite thoroughly. We have a list that's been compiled by one of our members that is being mapped out so that people who are interested to see it, all of the other sites that we have looked at. But I just wanted to share with you that the site that we have identified that we're interested in is right in our neighborhood. It's a site that's right on Guile Road. It's the south side of Guile Road as you're heading down Guile Road from the high school down to Blue Hills Parkway. And you can see in this image, there's a line going vertically with a green stripe down the middle. That is Blue Hills Parkway. And the Guile Road comes up from there and divides the current parcels that are noted there, the lavender parcel and the yellow parcel. That Guile Road goes right in between those. And as you see from this map, there are designations for what each of those parcels, who each of those parcels belongs to. The lavender parcel belongs to, as part of the conservation land in the town. The yellow parcel is designated to belonging to the town of Milton, but it's designated as land for active recreation. It doesn't actually technically belong to the Parks Department, but they are responsible for maintaining it. It is also what Brooks Field, our high school football field, is in a similar designated area. And if you look around that yellow portion, you can see some other ones. There's a section that we refer to as a hockey stick that comes up from Guile Road that's lavender, and then it continues on to a darker purple section and a green section. And what we've uncovered as we've explored these parcels further with town council is that the parcels are not recorded properly in the town records. And so that purple portion is actually conservation land, but it's not recorded as such. And the green portion, I think, is also conservation land, but I think that one is designated. But what became clear was that after the town council was looking at these sites, there's also a tiny yellow portion at the bottom of Guile Road, which was part of a swap that needed to take place in order for Guile Road to open out to Blue Hills Parkway when we built the high school. And so, but that parcel has also not been recorded properly. So in exploring these deeds, town council advised us that we needed to hold on a bit. We were hoping to go to the fall town meeting to try to acquire this portion. But he said, no, we need to have the parcels surveyed and then properly, the deeds properly recorded. But in essence, if you go down to the second slide, Margaret, you'll see what we're actually looking to do is what we're looking to do is make a swap between the conservation land and the land for active recreation. And that formerly, that southern parcel that was formerly conservation land would become the new piece of land that our new school would be built on. And that is in the neighborhood of 6 acres, 6 plus a little bit. So we are excited about this possibility. We have work to do to get the site surveyed and get the deeds recorded properly. Our hope is to go to the winter town meeting. The select board has decided that there will be a winter town meeting probably in January. But between now and then, we have begun reaching out to the neighbors of this parcel to begin conversations about what we intend to do and how we can work together to be sure that what we build there is something that the neighbors will be happy with. So we have already had one meeting with some of the neighbors from Home Inc., which is a senior community, which is just to the south, directly to the south of this parcel. And we've also been in touch with the Pine Tree Brook Neighborhood Association neighbors. And we haven't set additional meetings yet, but we plan in earnest to get those going beginning in September, once everybody's back from vacation. The third neighborhood affected is also along the Parkway, and there is a Blue Hills Parkway Neighborhood Association, and so we will be reaching out to them as well. We've heard from them already, and we wanted to make contact with them all before that story in the Milton Times came out, and so we did that, but it's just a preliminary outreach, but we will be doing more of that in the coming months. I just wanted to report it to you. We will be having the chair of the school building committee, Sean O'Rourke, come to our school committee meeting on October 6th to discuss this and other aspects of the project moving forward. So look forward to having him join us and continuing that conversation. But that's my report for now. Any questions?
Do you want me to stop sharing, Ada? Does anyone have any questions about the pictures?
No.
Okay.
Beverly?
Actually, it's a comment. And Ada, I want you to know how much I appreciate your persistence and your leadership on this. I know you've been at this for years and you didn't give up. And I think the place where the committee is wonderful. I know you've mentioned this work and the progress it has made, I think at the last meeting, but for people who are still watching, which may not be many, we owe you a debt of gratitude for your leadership in getting us to this point where it seems plausible that we have a site. And I didn't think it was going to happen. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Excellent, Ada. You are the woman who can get these things done. And along with Member White and the support of this district and all of us, I look forward to standing in that new school building someday and enjoying seeing children fill it up for sure. So thank you so much. We look forward to your report. I think you're going to report out on the 22nd and then Sean's going to come on the 6th, right?
Right. Betty, do you have anything to add? Betty?
No, you did a wonderful summary. That's fine.
Excellent. All right. The last official thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes from our July 6th and our July 21st meetings. I have that right? right? Our July 6th meeting, just for refresh your memories, was the smaller meeting that we had. Where some of us weren't there at that meeting, where we talked about with Martha Sandoval and approved the fees for the academic school year, fiscal year 22. That was the July 6th meeting. Did everyone have a chance to look at those minutes? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for our July 6th, 2021 school committee meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion about the minutes? No, this is a roll call vote. So if you weren't there, you can just abstain. I think Dr. Craig, you weren't there and somebody else wasn't there. I don't remember. Anyway, Member White,
Yes.
Member Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Craighead,
Abstain.
Member Rose Marin,
Abstain, I was absent also.
and Member Eberhardt, yes. So that's 4-2, 4-0-2, right? 4 approved, 0 no, and 2 abstentions. Okay, then the next minutes that we have is July 21st, 2021 meeting. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for our July 21st, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Any discussion about those minutes? I'm just going to ask Charlene to make one correction to remove a name from the minutes in the public comment section. And that's my only addition to that meeting, to those minutes. Okay, a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Rossini?
Yes.
Member Rose Marin?
Abstain.
And Member Eberhardt, yes. So 5-0-1. Thank you so much for the vote. The next thing on our agenda is old business. The only old business that I have is at our next school committee meeting, which is on the 8th, I would like an update from the district on and when we're going to have a release of the equity report from Cambridge Education. We've received several emails about that. I know that they were working on a final report to be released to the district, and I think that that report should be coming soon. So if at the next meeting we could have a date for that release, that would be helpful so that we can update the community and they can receive the report as well. Anything else about old business? I don't think there was anything else. Our next meeting agenda items for our next meeting, which is on September 8th, I have back to school updates. I'm really looking forward to hearing how the first few weeks of school went, discussing our school committee goals. And that's all I have on the agenda right now. I'm sure, will we have a finance report, Dr. Craighead?
Yes, and next time we will have the much anticipated vendor warrant approvals as well that we didn't have.
I look forward to those with bated breath. I don't think we'll have a policy update at that meeting. It's too soon. And we will discuss our school committee goals, and also I'll put back on the agenda our subcommittees, because we do have to talk about the teaching and learning subcommittee that we discussed at our retreat.
I would also like an update on the after school program and the pricing of the program.
Yes.
I think a clarification would be extraordinarily helpful to the school committee as well as the larger community on the levels and the pricing.
Right. I think we had left that abbreviated school committee meeting when with Martha and Superintendent Dexter, and they were. I know that they were going to be continuing to work together to look at that, and I know some changes were made in the programming and stuff. So an update would be wonderful. We can ask Martha to give us an update. All right, I put that down, after school update. All right, so if that is it, I am going to make a motion to adjourn. But before I do, I just want to say good luck to everyone because school starts next week. I am a school junkie. I love school. I love first days of school. There's a lot of firsts, I really think that first days are so important. And last first days, right? I made my children take a picture on their last first day. And I'll tell you out there, if you take pictures of your children on their first days of school and every day after, when they get to be adults, they might send you pictures of themselves on their first day of college or their first day of a new job. It does happen. But I really sincerely want to wish Superintendent Jett, Superintendent Dexter, Superintendent Spalding, the best of luck as they venture out into this first full year together as a leadership team. I want to wish Principal McDavitt, Principal Concanon, Dr. Redden, Dr. Fish, Dr. Elaine McNeil-Jamai, and did I forget anybody else from that list? I don't think so.
Cahill.
Miss Cahill, right, the high school principal, Miss Cahill, the very best of luck as they start the school year, full return. And I want to thank Lori Dunn and Charlene Roach and everyone else in the central office who have worked very hard over the last few weeks to get ready for school. Bill Ritchie and the facilities department, the custodial staff, I'm sure the buildings are sparkling right now, or they'll be very sparkling soon. The start of school is a very special time, particularly this year as we go back full on. I know we're wearing masks, but it's just a part of battling the pandemic. And as I've said multiple times, if you model the behavior and you model the way you want your children to feel, they will often take your lead. So model that joy and wonder of school, and they will follow your lead. So I wish everyone the best of luck. As we move. Yeah. So a motion to adjourn. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
And
Do we have to do a roll call vote, or can we just raise our hand? We are adjourning from this meeting of August 25th, 2021. Thank you all for your hard work, and we will see you soon. Good luck to all of you and your families as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.